the sea.
Well, is it in your experience possible to stimulate a love of literature, or is it something that also just happens or doesn't happen? Is it possible to take 20 people
of course, I've been a
and make them
professor.
love
I've been
literature
a
more?
professor of English and American literature during some 20 years at the University of Buenos Aires.
That's why I asked
Then
you.
I have tried to teach my students not literature, that can't be taught, but the love of literature. And I have sometimes succeeded and failed many times over, of course. Still, the whole thing I was doing in 4 months, I do very little. But still, I know there are many young men in Buenos Aires, maybe they're not so young now, but young men and young women who have their memories full of English verse. And I have been studying Old English and Old Norse for the last 20 years. And I have also taught many people the love of Old English.
And that, so there is a pedagogical art. It isn't simply a matter
But I think, but I think literature is being taught in the wrong way all the time. It's being taught in terms of history and sociology, and I won't do that. I mean, I have seen many teachers who are always falling back on dates, on place names.
You don't do that?
I do my best to avoid it. But one of the
On
reasons
the grounds that it's distracting?
Yes, of course. Yes, I say that's art irrelevant, no? If I, for example, if I give you a beautiful line of verse, that verse it should be beautiful today as it was centuries ago, or had it been written today, it should be beautiful also.
Well, doesn't the context in which you read it attach a certain meaning to it?
Yes, but I suppose if a line is beautiful, the context can be safely forgotten, no? If I say, for example, that the moon is the mirror of time, that's a fine metaphor, because you think of a mirror as being something round, it can be easily broken, and yet somehow the moon is as old as time, or half as old as time. Now, were I to add, that comes from a Persian poet, I wonder if that would add to the beauty. Perhaps it might add in a certain way, but still, had that metaphor been invented this morning, it would be a fine metaphor, no? The moon, the mirror of time. But it happens to be a Persian metaphor.
Well, but certainly certain things are accepted as beautiful, in part depending on the prevailing style, the kind of enthusiasm, for instance, that was shown for Restoration comedy. Some of that stuff isn't very funny now. Some of the romantic excesses of the 19th century are...
But I suppose that all that's rather artificial, no? That's one of the reasons why I'm so fond of Old English poetry, that nobody knows nothing whatever about the poets, about the precise, let's say, century they wrote in, and yet I find something very stirring about Old English poetry. Maybe
it has to stand on its own 2 feet, you mean?
I think it has to, or maybe because I like the sounds of it. Meich b'mashil v'umsoth yedur rekan sitha sejan. Now, those words sound, those sounds have a ring to them, no?
What does that say what is that in dollars?
That would say, wait a bit. In dollars, that would be, I can utter a true song about myself. I can tell my travels. That sounds like Walt Whitman, no?
Yes.
That was written in the 9th century in Northumberland. Meich b'meshilvum soth yedur rekan sitha sejan. And this Rapon translated is as this. I think it's rather crowd translation. May I, for my own sake, song's truth reckon, journey's jargon. Well, that's too much of a jargon to me, no? Of course, he's translating the sounds. May ich b'meshilvum soth yedur rekan sitha sejan. May I, for my sake, song's truth reckon, soth yedur rekan. He's translating the sounds more in a sense, no?
Yes.
And then sitha sejan, well, tell my travel, he translates journey's jargon, which is rather uncouth, at least to me, no?
Whose translation do you say?
It's Rapon's translation.
Oh, it is? I see.
It's Rapon's translation from the Anglo-Saxon, yes.
How would you have translated that word?
I would translate it literally. I can utter, I can say a true song about myself. I can tell my travels. I think that should be enough, no? Because a plain statement, a straightforward statement.
But in any case, this would be an example of something that that can't be influenced by change in fashion.
I don't think so.
It's beautiful then and
I
now.
think these things are beautiful. Well, Keats had it, he said, in To Flower Away, perhaps that thing was true. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. I suppose he meant that, no? If he meant anything.
Now, when you said too flowery away, you were intending what kind of criticism?
Well, a thing
One-
of
one
beauty is a
that's-
joy forever. There is something flowery about it. Don't you think so?
Well, I do, but I'm not sure that the perspective by which we are permitted that observation was available to him.
Yeah, but if you have to take perspective into account, then things are not too good, no? For example, I was reading Burton's translation of the Arabian Nights. I think Arabian Nights is a very fine work. Finally written to this morning. It's a very fine work.
And would read well
I think it
anytime.
would. I think it would. I think that's the test. That the book should read well at any time. Of course, when writers go in for word craft, for verbal, for word music, then of course it's very difficult to translate them. In the case of Shakespeare, for example, I suppose that half the beauty lies in the language, and then of course it can be translated.